And I don't think either of those two could have been able to cope. They'd been anywhere else. And that was the only good thing that happened, was that they were there.
Those two could never have coped anywhere else, and that was their only saving grace. What just exploded inside the British royal family is easily the ugliest scandal this institution has faced in decades. Queen Camilla's son Tom Parker Bowles walked right into King Charles' private estate and shamelessly used it for his own massive commercial gain. He ran a private business straight through royal property, pulling out seriously heavy cash while doing it. The second Princess Anne found out, she marched straight to her lawyers and launched all-out legal action. Then Camilla actually came for Anne. What followed next was definitely not some quiet family disagreement handled behind closed doors. It turned into a full nasty court battle that dragged the royal family's most heavily protected secrets right out into the open, and absolutely nobody inside those walls was ready for it. The entire scheme exposed what Tom did inside Balmoral. It was not even dawn yet when massive trucks began quietly rolling right through the gates of Balmoral Castle. Production vehicles, large catering vans, and heavy crates of lighting equipment moved silently through the pitch darkness onto the grounds of Britain's most intensely private royal residence. The crew members driving those vehicles had been officially hired, fully briefed, and totally paid for a completely legitimate commercial project. The man who sent them there confidently assured everyone that every single detail of their presence at Balmoral Castle had been completely and officially authorized. That man was Tom Parker Bowles, the son of Queen Camilla, and the official authorization he promised them simply did not exist anywhere except deep inside his own totally fabricated paperwork. Tom had initially approached a major production company with a bold proposal for a high end food and travel documentary series. The entire concept was built specifically around filming inside Britain's most highly exclusive aristocratic estates and showcasing their unique culinary traditions. The ultimate location that made this entire project totally irresistible to investors was Balmoral Castle itself. Now watch closely, because Tom sat across from that production company and told them with complete confidence that he alone had the full authority to grant them total castle access. He smoothly explained that as the son of Queen Camilla, he genuinely had the power to unlock those ancient doors and make the filming happen. The real money started moving almost immediately after those talks, and hundreds of thousands of pounds flowed straight into Tom's personal bank accounts as massive advanced payments for exclusive access he had absolutely zero right to sell to anyone. Tom had not just limited his bold promises to Balmoral either, because he separately pitched the exact same fraudulent access to Sandringham and Windsor Castle to various other interested parties. Multiple lucrative contracts had already been signed with multiple companies, and every single one of those agreements was built on the exact same foundation of lies about authority that Tom simply never possessed. To make absolutely certain that nobody started asking any difficult questions before the actual filming was finally done, Tom went even further than simply making empty verbal promises. He created incredibly forged documents, completely fake, official papers designed to look exactly like genuine royal authorization from senior palace officials, and confidently showed them to contractors and entire production teams whenever he truly needed to silence any doubts before they could grow. What Tom had completely failed to calculate, and what he had absolutely no way of preparing for, was Princess Anne suddenly arriving at Balmoral, completely unannounced. On the exact same day, his production crew was busy setting up inside the royal castle. When Anne walked through those heavy doors and saw exactly what was right in front of her, the shocking sight hit her like a brutal physical blow. A complete commercial film production had been arrogantly installed inside the castle's historic dining room, with massive lighting rigs towering over the priceless furniture. Crew members moved purposefully around the space with catering stations fully set up, as if this were just some ordinary filming location anywhere else in Britain. You and I both know this was not simply the cold anger of a royal discovering a property violation. What Anne felt in that exact moment went somewhere so much deeper and infinitely more painful than just that. Queen Elizabeth II had died inside this very castle. On September 8th, 2022, Anne had sat quietly at her mother's bedside in these exact same rooms, and completely heartbroken, watched the most important person in her life take her final breath. This castle's grand ballroom had actually held her mother's coffin, while the royal family, the state staff, and people from the surrounding community all came to say their final heart-wrenching goodbyes. And now some random hired film crew was casually standing inside it, repositioning the antique furniture and adjusting the harsh lighting, all because Queen Camilla's son had ruthlessly sold them access without asking a single member of the royal family for permission. The stunned staff members who witnessed Anne's raw reaction in those moments said she was literally physically shaking, and that the pure fury pouring off her was totally unlike anything they had ever seen from her before. Anne ordered the entire production to stop immediately. Then she brutally ordered every single person on that film crew to remove themselves and all of their heavy equipment from the royal property within exactly 1 hour. The confrontation became so incredibly intense and fiercely heated that security personnel physically intervened. Trust me, you and I won't forget this. And strictly ensured her orders were completely carried out. Tom was totally missing from the scene. He sent the entire production crew straight ahead to stick with me here. We are diving into a massive royal blunder. He was so completely confident that his shady operation would stay totally hidden or unchallenged. He did not even think it was necessary to be on the actual grounds when the cameras arrived. That arrogant choice to hide away while others executed his master plan would turn out to be an absolute disaster, literally the most catastrophic mistake of his entire life. Anne walked straight away from that mess and immediately contacted King Charles. She needed to find out if he actually greenlit a single part of what she had just witnessed. Charles was totally blindsided by her call. He immediately told her he gave zero permission for this and that. This was literally the first time he heard about any commercial camera crews swarming the royal estates. The king sounded totally mortified and deeply shaken by his sister's report. He then immediately dialed the royal legal squad directly and commanded them to launch a massive investigation into every single move Tom made, every hidden contract he had, signed every shady payment he pocketed, and every wild boast he made regarding his absolute authority over royal lands. What the legal team dug up when they pulled the threads was infinitely worse than Anne ever imagined, because this was. Now, watch closely. This was not the start of his story. It was just the first time he got totally busted. So, how long was Tom pulling this off? When the palace attorneys aggressively ripped his financial history wide open. They expected one foolish mistake from a guy losing his mind. Instead, what they uncovered was an absolute bombshell. A Yetzabitsi, brilliantly crafted underground operation running for literal years. It was built entirely on a single foundation. A totally fake but insanely profitable illusion that being Camilla's son granted Tom massive power and influence right inside the royal family circle. But to grasp how Tom reached the madness of sneaking film crews into Balmoral, we must jump back to 1999. That was the exact year the public caught a crystal clear look at who Tom Parker Bowles was. Hiding underneath that classy food critic mask he spent years perfecting, Tom was 24, working as a low level junior, publicist at the Cannes Film Festival. That is when an undercover reporter from the News of the World trapped him in a scandalous conversation that instantly blew up across the front pages of every British newspaper. Tom openly bragged to the journalist he could easily secure a cocaine supply for a high society girl. He chatted so casually about a massive underground drug den he visited on a regular basis. You and I saw this coming, right? Investigators dug deeper and found this was no guy who had recklessly experimented once or twice. Tom spent 3 entire years at Oxford University actively hunting down cocaine ecstasy and heavy cannabis from sketchy dealers. He took direct orders from his peers, acting as the main supplier for his circle through his entire run at the university. When the scandal shattered the internet, Camilla was absolutely devastated. She broke down crying and could not stop. Meanwhile, Charles called Tom, directly furiously calling him an absolute fool. Then he aggressively severed Tom's direct access to young Prince William, who was barely 16 years old back then. Tom called his mother straight from Cannes and plainly confessed that he was heavily using cocaine, begging for forgiveness. Camilla cried even harder while Charles quietly stepped in to start, managing the disastrous fallout. But here is the secret never leaked to the public. Palace officials formally discussed whether Tom posed a massive, genuine security threat to the future King of England. The ultimate fear was not just that Tom abused drugs himself, but that he acted as a heavy supplier for 3 straight years. Naturally, that damning discovery was buried. Charles shielded his stepson. The explosive story slowly vanished from the headlines, and Tom walked completely away from the darkest scandal of his life, with zero real consequences. But the years that followed brought an entirely new level of darkness. Tom married fashion editor Sarah in 2005. The couple had 2 kids before the marriage violently collapsed in 2018. Insiders close to the royal family called it an incredibly bitter, soul crushing separation. After the brutal divorce, Tom forged a new romance with journalist Alice Procope. They stayed together for 2 years until she tragically lost her battle with cancer in March 2021. Friends claimed losing Alice shattered something deep inside his soul that never healed. In the dark months following her passing, he dove straight back into his greedy commercial schemes with an insane recklessness that absolutely terrified everyone around him. So, what do you and I make of this? He exploited his royal status with zero restraint. Stick around for what the Stick with me here, because what these financial investigators uncovered is a scandal operating right in plain sight. Restaurant owners actually stepped up, admitting they felt totally pressured to give Tom free meals and VIP treatment. Why? Because a silent, heavy threat loomed over every single interaction, refusing a massive favor to the Queen consorts. Son, that carried absolute career suicide, and nobody wanted to risk finding out. Huge corporate sponsors were tossing him insane cash rates, money that completely ignored his actual market value in the food industry, because everything they really bought was pure, unadulterated access to the royal family. Big name publishers tossing massive cash at his cookbooks, they definitely weren't investing in some genius culinary writer. No, they were literally buying the Queen Consort's son. And those advance checks and royalties proved it. The astronomical numbers skyrocketed way past anything his actual talent could ever justify. But it gets worse. Tom started using official palace letterheads and communication, channels for his own personal side hustles, which meant absolutely anybody opening a letter tied to that palace seal instantly assumed he had the full untouchable backing of the entire royal family. His marketing pitches were absolutely loaded with photos standing beside Camilla or posing at elite royal events. The grand result of all this, an incredibly powerful, totally fake illusion of a permanent royal endorsement, one that zero actual palace authorities ever signed off on. And adding to this, now pay attention here because a massive simmering pressure cooker inside the family suddenly exploded against Tom from a totally unexpected direction. Prince William quietly sent a ruthless message through private channels. He was absolutely not going to attend any Christmas gatherings at Sandringham if Tom showed his face. And this deep hatred, not some new feeling that just popped up recently. The bad blood between William and Tom dragged all the way back to 1995, back when palace officials secretly debated if Tom, an actual known drug supplier, posed a severe and genuine threat to the future king. William got the dark warning as a teenager, and he locked that secret away, carrying it completely quietly for over 20 long years. So when the entire Balmoral scam finally leaked out, William's reaction wasn't shock at all. It was pure ice-cold fury, a rage that immediately turned into intense private pressure on King Charles to back off, letting Anne hunt down the legal case with zero interference from the throne. Eventually, the investigators pieced together the ultimate puzzle. Every dirty move Tom made and every single year, he got away with it. The proof was utterly devastating. This wasn't some tiny mistake by a guy who lost his path for a minute. No, it was a calculated, cold-blooded exploitation of the crown, built up for years and guarded at every single turn by that exact same toxic family silence and fear of bad PR that kept Tom perfectly shielded since he was 24. So when the sheer massive scale of this manhunt finally hit Camilla, did she just wait around quietly? Not a chance. You and I both know she moved fast. And her next play turned a basic scandal into a nightmare that threatened to rip the royal bloodline apart from the inside. Camilla's savage, desperate war, and exactly what it ultimately cost her. When Camilla saw the massive scope of her son's crimes and finally grasped just how fiercely Princess Anne wanted to drag him into open court, something inside the Queen completely snapped, shifting from panic straight into savage combat mode. She absolutely refused to just sit on the sidelines and let the brutal law take him down. Camilla's aggressive opening move marching straight up to King Charles. She passionately argued that dragging Tom through court would spark an absolute media apocalypse, claiming it would hurt the sacred crown way worse than whatever Tom actually pulled off at Balmoral. But Princess Anne, when she heard that pathetic excuse, she saw right through the illusion, identifying it for exactly what it was. A desperate mother using the Grand Monarchy as a meat shield, guarding her son from the massive karma he fully and deliberately earned. This brutal clash between Camilla and Anne. Definitely not some polite, quiet, little disagreement that elite royal women usually handle with perfect grace. Servants literally heard them screaming right through the heavy walls of that private room. Anne completely refused to back down a single inch. Nobody, absolutely no matter their blood connection, to the royals gets to pull off massive fraud on Tom's insane level and just walk away scot-free, simply because his mom wore the crown. Camilla pushed back with equal venom, demanding that family loyalty and the crown's flawless public image come way before any legal drama. When screaming at each other failed completely, Camilla went straight behind Anne's back, contacting the royal lawyers directly, actually trying to order them to kill the entire investigation. So, what do you and I make of this madness? Nobody knew if the Queen could actually override the Princess Royal? Stick with me here. The lawyers finally concluded their ultimate duty was to fiercely protect the crown's interests. So they pushed the investigation forward, but the Queen trying to completely shut it down. That was noted, never forgotten. Camilla immediately pivoted her focus to the palace staff, who actually witnessed what Tom did, allegedly stepping in. She basically told the household workers that true loyalty meant backing Tom, completely ignoring the investigators. That manipulation tactic. It completely backfired in seconds. Several veteran royal employees went straight to Princess Anne. They exposed every single threat made against them. This pathetic intimidation attempt basically handed Anne's lawyers an incredible new weapon. It proved exactly how ruthless Camilla could be. The Queen then bankrolled Tom's entire legal defense using her personal funds. She hired the absolute most vicious, high-priced attorneys out there, but their game plan was never to actually defend Tom's terrible behavior. No, they wanted to drown everything in technicalities and launch brutal personal attacks on Anne's true motives. They framed the princess as a totally vindictive villain, weaponizing the legal system for a massive decades-long personal grudge against Camilla. A completely toxic lie, but it totally worked in blurring the truth behind Anne's real fight. Now watch closely. To figure out why anyone bought this smear campaign, we must expose the real history between these two powerhouse women. Back when Charles married Camilla in 2005, Queen Elizabeth ordered her private secretary to draft an official binding document. It strictly confirmed that Anne would never ever be forced to curtsy to Camilla. No exceptions. The craziest part, Anne demanded that paperwork herself. One former palace insider revealed that both Anne and Princess Alexandra absolutely refused to show any sort of bowing or formal respect whatsoever to Camilla. The simple fact that this royal contract even existed proves exactly how deep and bitter Anne's hatred ran. This massive grudge started way back in the early 1970s. Camilla's chaotic on and off boyfriend, Andrew Parker, Bowles, was literally dating Princess Anne at the exact same time. Andrew ultimately picked Camilla and married her in 1973. One royal expert famously called this whole mess a totally bizarre love. Rectangle. It completely dragged in the Queen's two eldest kids and both Parker Bowles' siblings simultaneously. Honestly, that sheer public humiliation never ever healed inside Princess Anne. She just buried it under decades of strict royal duty and flawless public self-control. But when Anne confronted Camilla over Tom's scandal, she wasn't just the princess royal guarding the crown, she was a furious woman, holding 30 years of hidden pain, finally finding a perfect legal loophole to stand her ground and fight back. And she absolutely refused to let Camilla steal this victory. With every single sabotage attempt shut down, this massive war shifted straight into the courtroom. And what unfolded there was incredibly messy, completely exposing the deeply broken toxic system hiding right beneath the British monarchy. Crazy, right? This legal war and royal reckoning is about to change everything going forward. Once this scandal hit the private courts, it absolutely did not go smoothly or quickly toward any sort of clean resolution. Instead, it became a brutal, exhausting war dragged out across technical legal battlegrounds. They buried it under massive constitutional questions that literally nobody in the British legal system had ever been forced to answer before now. And right at the core of this chaos was a massive loophole that Tom's elite lawyers spotted the second the trial started. They planned to ruthlessly exploit it until it either shattered the prosecution or completely buried it forever. Get this: Balmoral Castle is not part of the official Crown estate. That one detail carries insane legal weight. The Crown estate covers properties managed for the public running under strict government watch and operating within a very clear, highly established legal system. But Balmoral It plays by completely different rules. It is the king's own private property inherited directly and owned personally by him, with zero public or institutional oversight at all, which means deciding who actually has the legal authority to press charges over things happening inside. Those rules is wildly and uncomfortably vague. Tom's legal team attacked this exact loophole the moment the hearings started. They aggressively argued that only King Charles, acting as the sole private owner of Balmoral, actually had the power to greenlight a prosecution. And Charles, completely trapped between his sister's absolute fury and his wife's desperate pressure, he just refused to pick a side. He literally took no clear stance at all. Camilla's tight control over Charles during that time was painfully obvious to anyone paying attention. He froze. He did not approve the lawsuit. Charles dropped zero statements supporting Anne's legal war and offered zero actual condemnation of Tom's actions. The king tried playing neutral, but honestly, he just handed the defense exactly what they wanted. Absolutely wild. Stick with me here. We are diving into a ruthless royal legal war. Anne's lawyers completely destroyed that weak excuse. They argued Tom's massive fraud was done through everyday business deals, signed contracts, and literal cash changing hands. Just private citizens moving money in the real world. Meaning the whole scandal fell strictly under standard civil and criminal laws entirely regardless of which fancy palace was used for the scam. That elite royal connection absolutely did not build a magical legal shield around Tom. He was not untouchable. The exact same harsh laws applied to him as everyone else. Living in Britain, faking official government documents, a literal crime. Scamming huge piles of money using completely fabricated lies. Also, a massive crime. And none of that suddenly disappeared just because the stolen property happened to personally belong to the king, rather than the official crown estate. But guess what Tom's ruthless legal defense team was nowhere near finished with? Their aggressive counterattacks. They aggressively challenged Princess Anne's actual legal right to even bring this case forward. They fought against crucial pieces of evidence being used. They literally dragged up decades of old records about how royal properties were historically managed, desperately hunting for just one example of a family member or elite insider getting casual VIP access to an estate without signing the proper formal paperwork. Their ultimate desperate strategy here was to now pay close attention to this move. They tried arguing Tom's shady behavior actually had a long history, not without some deep precedent within the royal family's own messy practices. Anne's lawyers fought back against every single one of those dirty tricks with absolute ferocity. The savage fights over exactly which documents to expose and whose testimony would be forced on record, dragged out for months. Legal bills exploded easily, skyrocketing into hundreds of thousands of pounds for both sides of this brutal courtroom war, and those palace staff members who directly witnessed everything at Balmoral. They became a massive, messy battleground themselves. Some employees demanded literal legal subpoenas before they would even agree to show up and testify. Meanwhile, others suddenly developed incredibly convenient, totally suspicious memory loss. The second, they faced intense courtroom questioning. The crushing pressure placed on these key witnesses was intensely hitting them from all sides at once. The sheer terror of picking the losing side in this vicious royal civil war was suffocating and real. Making things even harder for Anne's team, King Charles was entirely missing in action. Without Charles, Openly supporting his sister, this explosive criminal case just hovered in a weird institutional limbo, a place where the massive fraud was glaringly obvious, yet nobody with actual authority had the guts to confront it head on. Meanwhile, Anne paid her soaring legal fees out of her own pocket, refusing to touch a single dime of royal money. She knew the exact second she used palace funds, Tom's slick lawyers would completely twist it to aggressively push their narrative that she was abusing her royal status. You see it too, right? This entire chaotic scandal actually exposed something way bigger and way more terrifying than just one guy's fake document scam. The British monarchy literally lacks any real system to hold its own blood relatives or their elite cronies actually accountable for major serious crimes. There is absolutely no internal committee free from the crown's shadow. No neutral judge safely operating completely outside royal politics. And absolutely zero formal processes that can be violently derailed by the elite power players sitting at the top of the palace. When a royal insider pulls off a massive crime, the absolute only people who actually hold the true power to punish them are the other royals. And when that family goes to war, exactly like Charles and did here, the entire justice system breaks down, freezing into total silence. Princess Anne completely understood this reality. Dragging Tom into a public courtroom wasn't just some basic lawsuit from an angry landlord chasing a simple payout through standard channels. It was a vicious, calculated attack on the secret unspoken pact that has literally glued the British monarchy together for hundreds of years. The golden rule demanding that toxic royal scandals stay locked inside the family, completely hidden from public legal records. Anne looked at that ancient cover up rule and decided it was officially dead and buried. She realized the elite institution she spent her entire life defending desperately needed true protection from the very greedy parasites living inside and feeding off it. If Anne wins this war, she shatters that royal agreement forever. She proves that standing next to the crown is no longer a magic shield, and those elite family connections simply will not save you from doing hard time for fraud. But if the palace machine successfully wins by burying this case through endless delays, royal silence, and the suffocating combined power of Queen Camilla and King Charles. So, what do you and I take from this? It confirms the elite royal protection holds exactly like it always has, and it will permanently protect the insiders. Either way, this explosive scandal leaves behind absolute unfixable damage that stick with me here because this royal damage is absolutely permanent. King Charles just proved he completely lacks the spine to stand, firmly on the right side of a massive fraud scandal involving his actual private estate. And Camilla, she just showed the entire world. She is totally fine, intimidating key witnesses, blocking criminal investigators, and dumping every single penny of her massive personal fortune into saving a son who literally scammed strangers by renting out the king's own house. Now, Tom. Parker Bowles, the guy who built his whole life cashing in on his mom's royal status and his stepdad's power. Now, pay attention here. He is finally facing the crushing weight of his incredibly shady career. But then, there is Princess Anne, a fierce woman who has sacrificed more blood, sweat, and tears for the British crown than absolutely anyone else alive. The daughter who faithfully stayed right by Queen Elizabeth's side during her final tragic moments at Balmoral, and who watched her mother's coffin lay in that legendary castle. While millions cried, she is still standing strong, still fighting back. She absolutely refuses, using every ounce of her willpower, to accept that certain elite royals are simply too powerful for karma. So what do you and I make of this? She is not done yet.